Friends, if you want to watch super hit movie 2 Weeks Notice in English, then you must like this video. If you're visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, friends. In today's video, the movie we're going to talk about is called 2 Weeks Notice. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it. All the interesting about this movie in today's video, I am going to tell you. I am also going to give you all the information on which 2 Weeks Notice is a 2002 American romantic comedy film written and directed by Mark Lawrence and starring Sandra Bullock and Hugh Grant, with Alicia, Witt, Dana Ivey, Robert Klein, and Heather Burns. In the film, an idealistic, liberal lawyer, Bullock, goes to work for a narcissistic, billionaire developer, Grant, and they form an unlikely pair. The film was released in the United States on December 20, 2002, by Warner Bros. Pictures. It received mixed reviews from critics and grossed $199 million worldwide. Plot: the Coney Island Community Center Lucy wants to preserve was actually the Child's Restaurant location on Coney Island's Riegelman Boardwalk. It was declared a New York landmark a month after the film's premiere. It closed later, as in this 2013 picture, and after renovation became part of the Ford Amphitheater at Coney Island. Lucy Kelson is an intelligent, highly competent liberal lawyer who specializes in historic preservation, environmental law, and pro bono causes in New York City. George Wade is an arrogant, needy billionaire real estate developer and stylish womanizing playboy who is also quite naive. Lucy's hard work and devotion to others contrasts sharply with George's childish recklessness and greed. Lucy meets George in an attempt to stop the destruction of the Coney Island Community Center from her childhood. Discovering she graduated from prestigious Harvard Law School, he offers to hire her to replace his old chief counsel, overlooking their opposing views of real estate development. She decides the benefits he offers for discretionary funding for community causes she espouses outweighs the negatives, especially as he promises to protect the community center. Lucy finds what he really requires is advice in all aspects of his life. She regretfully becomes his indispensable assistant, and he calls her for every little thing at all hours. After Lucy is disrupted at a friend's wedding by George's latest emergency, what to wear to an event he is attending, she gives him 2 weeks' notice of resignation. Lucy looks for work at other firms, but George has called in advance asking them not to hire her so he can keep her on. Eventually, he admits defeat, and she offers to help him find a replacement, but unaware of how close and interdependent they have become. They act like an old married couple at a restaurant, able to simultaneously carry out a conversation while involuntarily exchanging food out of habit from knowing each other's food preferences. When potential interviewee June Carver shows up without an appointment seeking the position, Lucy speaks to her but is concerned she lacks real estate experience. When George sees June, he is immediately attracted and is ready to hire her on the spot, seemingly disregarding Lucy's concerns. Lucy becomes increasingly concerned and competitive with her replacement. When George invites June to business events that Lucy would normally go on, she acts increasingly jealous. Lucy learns that despite George's promise, the community center is going to be knocked down, and so goes to confront him on his apparent betrayal. Arriving at his hotel, she finds George and June in his suite in lingerie during a game of strip chess. George confronts her the next day, her last day, where Lucy reminds him he promised her to spare the community center and storms out. After Lucy is gone, George realizes his time with her has demonstrated he needs to change. Meanwhile, in her new job, she realizes she misses him. George goes in search of Lucy and reveals he decided to keep his promise to her. She initially rebuffs him, but then runs after him and they declare their feelings. In the DVD version of the film, an unreleased wedding scene of George and Lucy was featured. George and Lucy were married at the community center, attended by family and friends. Cast Hugh Grant as George Wade, Sandra Bullock as Lucy Kelson, Alicia Witt as June Carver, Dana Ivey as Ruth Kelson, Robert Klein as Larry Kelson, Heather Burns as Meryl Brooks, David Haig as Howard Wade, Dorian Missick as Tony. In addition, Jason Antoon portrays Norman and Sharon Wilkins plays Polly St. Clair, while Mike Piazza, Donald Trump, and Nora Jones make cameo appearances as themselves. Production director Mark Lawrence suffered headaches, sinus infections, a root canal, and a slipped disc while making the film. Lawrence previously wrote the films Forces of Nature and Miss Congeniality, which starred Bullock, and it was on the latter film where he asked her to look at his unfinished script. Bullock liked it enough to star in and produce the film. Grant was first choice for the part. He and Bullock had already wanted to work together. Lawrence hoped the film would be different enough for Grant, not the same as his Notting Hill character, but not as unpleasant as his Bridget Jones's Diary character. Filming took place in New York City, and was noted as the first Hollywood production to take place after the September 11 attacks. Critical response. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 42% of 124 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of 5.3/10. The website's consensus reads, though 2 Weeks' Notice has nothing new to add to the crowded genre, Hugh Grant and Sandra Bullock make the movie a pleasant, if predictable, sit. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 42 out of 100, based on 30 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of B+ on an A+ to F scale. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times gave the film 3 out of 4 and wrote, "Some of the dialogue has a real zing to it. There were wicked little one-liners that slipped in under the radar and nudged the audience in the ribs." Lisa Schwartzbaum of Entertainment Weekly wrote that it knows what it needs to do for both its stars, does it, and doesn't make a federal case about it. I'd watch these two together again in a New York minute. David Rooney of Variety called it an affable but undernourished romantic comedy that fails to match the freshness of the actress, producer, and writer's previous collaboration, Miss Congeniality. Box office 2 Weeks' Notice opened at number 2 domestically, behind The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, and spent its first 5 weeks in the top 10 at the box office. It grossed $93.3 million in the United States and Canada and $105.7 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $199 million, against a budget of $60 million. Punctuation issue. In the best-selling book on punctuation, Eats, Shoots, and Leaves, The Zero-Tolerance Approach to Punctuation, author Lynn Truss points out that the spelling of the film's title is grammatically incorrect because it is missing an apostrophe. 2 Weeks' Notice. The book's original hardcover edition featured Truss, in her author's photo, glaring at the poster and holding a marker where the apostrophe should be. If I tell you 2 Weeks' Notice is a romantic comedy and it stars Sandra Bullock and Hugh Grant, what do you already know, and what do you need to know? You already know that when they meet the first time, they don't like each other. That circumstances bring them together. That they get along fine, but are sometimes scared by that and back off a little. That they are falling in love without knowing it. That just when they're about to know it, circumstances force them apart. That they seem doomed to live separately, their love never realized. That circumstances bring them back together again. That they finally cave in and admit they're in love. You need to know what her job is, what his job is, what they disagree about, what their personality flaws are, and whether, just when their eyes are about to meet, it is a woman who seems to lure him away, or a man who seems to lure her away. You also need to know certain plug-in details of the movie, such as which ethnic groups and ethnic foods it will assign, and what fantasy dreams it will realize. I have not, by making these observations, spoiled the plot of the movie. I have spoiled the plot of every romantic comedy. Just last week I saw Made in Manhattan. And with that one, you also know the same things, and don't know the same things. The thing is, it doesn't matter that you know. If the actors are charming and the dialogue makes an effort to be witty and smart, the movie will work, even though it faithfully follows the ancient formulas. Romantic comedies are the comfort food of the movies. There are nights when you don't feel like a chef who thinks he's more important than the food. When you feel like sliding into a booth at some Formica joint where the waitress calls you Han and writes your order on a green and white guest check. Walking into 2 Weeks' Notice at the end of a hectic day, week, month, and year, I wanted it to be a typical romantic comedy starring those two lovable people, Sandra Bullock and Hugh Grant. And it was. And some of the dialogue has a real zing to it. There were wicked little one-liners that slipped in under the radar and nudged the audience in the ribs. She plays a Harvard Law graduate who devotes her life to liberal causes, such as saving the environment and preserving landmarks. He plays a billionaire land developer who devotes his life to despoiling the environment and tearing down landmarks. They disagree about politics and everything else. He is an insufferable egotist, superficial and supercilious, amazed by his own charm and good looks. She is phobic about germs, has a boyfriend she never sees, and thinks anybody who wants to hire her wants to sleep with her. He is also impulsive, and after she assaults him with a demand to save her favorite landmark, he hires her on the spot, promises he will not offend her sensibilities, and gives her a big salary. He does this, of course, because he plans to violate all of his promises and because he wants to sleep with her. He may not know that, but we do. The first half of the movie is just about perfect, of its kind, and I found myself laughing more than I expected to, and even grinning at a colleague who was one seat over, because we were both appreciating how much better the movie was than it had to be. Then a funny thing happens. The movie sort of loses its way. This happens at about the time the billionaire, whose name is George Wade, agrees to let the lawyer, whose name is Lucy Kelson, quit and go back to her pro bono work. Her replacement is June Carter, Alicia Witt, a dazzling redhead with great legs and flattery skills. We think we know that she is going to be a rat and seduce George and all the usual stuff. But no, she does make moves in that direction, but from instinct, not design. The fact is, she's essentially a sweet and decent person. At one point, I thought I even heard her say she was married, but I must have misheard, as no romantic comedy would ever make the other woman technically unavailable. Anyway, what goes wrong is not Alicia Witt's fault. She plays the role as written. It's just that, by not making her a villain, writer-director Mark Lawrence loses the momentum the formula could have supplied him. The last half of the movie basically involves the key characters being nicer than we expect them to be, more decent than we thought, and less cranked up into emotional overdrive. The result is a certain loss of energy. I liked the movie, anyway. I like the way the characters talk, I like the way they slip in political punchlines, and how some of the dialogue actually makes points about rich and poor, left and right, male and female, Democratic and Republican. The characters are not entirely governed by their genitals. Sandra Bullock, who produced the film, knew just what she was doing and how to do it. Hugh Grant knew just what he was getting into. Some critics will claim they play their usual roles, but Grant in particular finds a new note, a little more abrupt, a little more daffy than usual. And they bring to the movie what it must have: two people who we want to see kissing each other, and amusing ways to frustrate us until, of course, they finally do. What can I write about 2 weeks' notice that I haven't written about every mediocre romantic comedy to come down Hollywood's pipeline? There's the cotton candy comparison. The movie is sweet, sometimes too sweet and airy, with so little substance that it teases without sustaining or satisfying, and is instantly forgotten the moment it is gone. Or the city snowfall metaphor, fresh and full of promise to start, then growing progressively less appealing as the fluff turns to slush. Both are apt when it comes to 2 weeks' notice, a movie that is relentlessly inoffensive and completely unoriginal, two qualities that combine to make it only sporadically charming and rarely, if ever, compelling. Men and women who go to romantic comedies for no reason other than to see a pair of improbably matched screen characters fall in love will find that 2 weeks' notice fills the bill. Director Mark Lawrence, making his feature debut, knows his target audience and hones in on them with a single-minded purpose that will alienate nearly everyone else. Yet even for that crowd, there's a flaw. The movie's inevitable happy ending seems rushed. Those who enjoy savoring the payoff may feel that they are being given the bum's rush. 2 weeks' notice is almost all build-up, the romantic comedy's foreplay. The film's stars, despite both being romantic comedy veterans, are not well matched. Their chemistry is fitful. There are occasional sparks, but they don't last. Part of the problem is Sandra Bullock's Lucy, who is quite frankly uninteresting. It's difficult to say whether I'm bored by the actress or this, her staple alter ego, but I spent a good portion of the film wondering why I once found Bullock to be charismatic. Hugh Grant, on the other hand, is a spark plug, lively, charming, and energetic. He delivers nearly every line of dialogue with his trademark panache. He is good enough that he saves more than one scene when Bullock can't carry her own weight. Lucy Kelson, Bullock, is a liberal lawyer who spends her days protesting the demolition of old buildings by soulless megacorporations. The frequent target of Lucy's protests is George Wade Grant, a Donald Trump-like bazillionaire whose company makes money by modernizing communities. Lucy sees herself as anti-gentrification. George views her as anti-progress. Yet, through a strange set of coincidences, she ends up working for him as his chief counsel. He is impressed by her skills, and the carrot that gets her to accept the job is that, in her position, she can do more good than as an outsider looking in. Over the course of the months during which she works for George, Lucy becomes indispensable, yet her function evolves into more of a personal assistant than an attorney. Eventually, fed up with menial tasks like choosing which suit he should wear, she gives her notice. But as she prepares to depart, she and George discover that their feelings may run deeper than those of employee and employer. You know where this is going. I know where this is going. Everyone knows where this is going. The road is mostly clear, cluttered only by the usual misunderstandings that enable a fairly simple romantic comedy like this to stay on the screen long enough to be called a feature film. Lucy has a boyfriend, although we never see him, and her vixen-like replacement, Alicia Witt, makes a blatant play for George right under her nose, which doesn't sit well with Lucy, especially when she walks in on them in the midst of a friendly game of strip chess. 2 weeks' notice is too bland to be either genuinely pleasant or aggressively annoying. Like all but the best romantic comedies, it's unthreatening and disposable. Grant is such an excellent leading man for light comedy, but he needs the right script and intelligent, sympathetic direction. Notting Hill, Four Weddings and Bridget Jones showed he can have great chemistry with an American leading lady. But Mickey Blue Eyes and the world historically bad 9 Months showed how Grant wilts in the wrong rom-com ecosystem. This New York comedy teams him with Sandra Bullock in full ditzy, klutzy mode, pushing the hair out of her eyes, being distracted, falling over things, etc. She plays Lucy, an idealistic lawyer hired by the Lothario real estate millionaire George Wade. Hugh Grant. Why does she take the job? Wade has promised not to knock down her much-loved community center for his development, and apparently she can do loads of pro bono work in his organization. How exactly? What exactly? Well, not to worry about the plot. He is absurdly demanding. She tries to quit, but he won't let her, and they wind up getting sweet on each other. There are a few funny lines, but Bullock's blank-eyed deployment of her arsenal of kooky mannerisms is chilling, and writer-director Mark Lawrence doesn't have the Richard Curtis ear for English dialogue. The spark isn't there, and the soufflé doesn't rise. Distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures, release date December 20th, 2020, No. 2, running time 102 minutes, country United Language English, budget $60 million, box office $199 million. So guys, this is their review of 2 Weeks Notice movie and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting, and if you like this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.